Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. By the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down and there we wept when we remember Zion. Even if you aren't a reggae fan, there are very high chances that you are very familiar with these lyrics from the classic song The Rivers of Babylon. Depending on the decade in which you were born in, you might have different ideas about who did that song, as it's been covered by tons of various acts over the past 5 decades. For me, I grew up thinking that it was the creation of 70s disco pop group Boney M, while millennial reggae fans might mistake it for an original composition by Luciano off his 2001 album The Great Controversy. I only found out about a decade ago that the song was originally done by Rocksteady Group, the Melodians, after I watched the classic movie The Harder They Come. The Melodians were not just one of many groups, they were indeed among the greatest that put Rocksteady on the global map, after it would evolve from the frenetic driving rhythms of ska. When ska slowed down into the more soulful Rocksteady, it would empower a whole generation of new singers and harmony vocal groups and afford them the space and room to express their vocal talents. And though the heydays of Rocksteady will last just 3 years, between 1966 and 1968, before evolving into reggae, it's considered and regarded by many music critics as the best time in Jamaican music. Along with the likes of the Paragons, the Techniques, and Toots and the Maytals, the Melodians were among the foundational Rocksteady acts that made that era what it was. Ironically, though a Rocksteady act through and through, the Melodians are today mostly remembered and given the credit for creating one of the greatest Rastafarian anthems in By the Rivers of Babylon, which is in my humble opinion among the greatest songs ever composed. But who were they? Let's take a look at the mighty Melodians. This iconic group began with Tony Brevet in 1965, the nephew of Scatterlight bassist Lloyd Brevet. He got the idea for a singing group while still in high school and formed a trio with his pals Trevor McNaughton and Brent Dow in the Greenwich area of Kingston. And a fourth friend, Brentford Kogo, became the group's songwriter and arranger. The boys were gifted singers and got early exposure singing at a club called Son Batson's Place along Maxfield Avenue in Kingston. They caught the eye of singer and producer Prince Buster, for whom they recorded a couple of singles for a sound system. But in 1966, they would get a breakthrough when singer Ken Booth introduced the trio to Studio One, and after an audition for Coxsone Dodd, the producer took them on and began to put their lovely voices to wax. And the debut single, titled Lay It On Me, became a local hit and would open the floodgates for a slew of hits, including Meet Me and Let's Join Hands. They were off to a great start, but as was the common story with Studio One artists, the Melodians would grow tired of life with that outfit over the lack of financial rewards. So in 1967, they were poached by Coxsone Dodd's main rival, Arthur Duke Reid. That producer offered them more money than they'd ever seen before, and they moved over to his own outfit named Treasure Isle Studios, where they unleashed a string of hits like You Caught Me, Last Train to Expo 67, and I Just Know How She Feels. The Melodians were an incredible group. Tony Brevet's lush baritone and Dow's haunting tenor, neatly foiled by Trevor McNaughton's flawless harmonies, made them one of the elite harmony trios that were all the rave in that era. And they would, alongside the Heptones, the Gay Lads, and the Paragons, cement Rocksteady as Jamaica's hottest sound. But ironically, issues over money would cause them to also fall out with Duke Reid, and they would leave Treasure Isle Studios in 1968, and then would move over to Sonia Pottinger's High Note label for a brief while, before trying their hands as producers themselves when they formed a record label called Lynx Records, along with Ken Booth and Delroy Wilson, who were also fed up with the excesses of Jamaican producers. That enterprise didn't last long though, and they went back to recording with Coxsone Dodd and Sonia Pottinger, and they would even mend fences with Duke Reid, and would bag a couple of hits again with Treasure Isle Records. In those times, musical history was being made as Jamaican artists were beginning to break into the international market. Desmond Dekker, for one, had become the first reggae act to get a global smash hit with his song Israelites that went to number 1 in the UK and top 10 in many countries around the world. The Pioneers blew their way into the UK top 10 with the song Long Shot Kick the Bucket, and Jimmy Cliff's Wonderful World, Beautiful People also went up to number 6 in the UK and top 10 in many countries. And all these acts had one factor in common that was in the person of their producer in the great Leslie Kong. The Melodians were big in Jamaica, but a desire to break into the international markets saw them pitch their musical tent with that producer, and just like clockwork, they began to get their tastes of foreign success almost immediately. Their first recording with Leslie Kong's Beverly's record label was the track Sweet Sensation that was released in 1969. and would break into the UK charts in January 1970. By then, the Rastafarian movement in Jamaica was growing at an astronomical rate since the visits of Emperor Haile Selassie 4 years earlier, and the phenomenon of Roots Reggae was getting off the ground. For their next song, the Melodians, who had always been a Rocksteady group, opened their accounts as a reggae group with a song named Rivers of Babylon. The song was an adaptation of Psalm 137 from the Bible, which was a lamentation of the Israelites after their capital city, Jerusalem, had been conquered and destroyed, and had been taken away into exile by the Babylonians in a strange land. And in a Jamaican sense, that song would play on the concept of Rastafarians being exiles from Africa by the forces of Babylon, now represented in modern times by the West. Saying the song struck a chord upon release in 1970 is putting it mildly. Its popularity with the Rasta community spread like wildfire, and it startled the Jamaican government that banned the song from Jamaican airwaves for being subversive and potentially inflammatory. And it took Leslie Kong attacking the government for banning what was essentially Christian lyrics for the ban to be lifted, and barely 3 weeks later, the song would fly up to #1 on Jamaica's charts. Upon release in the UK, it became an instant hit with the skinhead community and would sell more than 70,000 copies in record time. To all intents and purposes, a hit track, but it would really break into global consciousness upon its inclusion in the soundtrack of the 1972 movie The Harder They Come, the movie credited with launching reggae into the global space. The Melodians' time with Leslie Kong was very successful, but sadly, tragedy would end that partnership when Leslie Kong passed away due to heart failure in August 1971 at the very peak of his game. It was a huge blow to the Melodians, as working with Leslie Kong had been very fruitful, but their rapport with that producer had been excellent compared to past experiences. But despite their loss, the Melodians overcame their grief to record some amazing material that would include the Tony Brevet produced This Beautiful Land and Without You in 1972. But in one shocking twist, the group would break up in 1973 when Brent Dow would leave for a solo career. So Brevet and McNaughton would also embark on solo careers over the years, but the trio would unite sporadically for various projects, like their second album, Sweet Sensation, in 1977 for producer Harry J, and their third album, Premeditation, for Sonia Pottinger's Skynote Records in 1978. And it was that year that their song Rivers of Babylon would get a reintroduction to international fans, when German-based disco band Boney M released it as a single to incredible success and acclaim. Boney M's version sold 2 million copies in that same year in the UK alone, and will stay at #1 in the UK charts for 5 whole weeks, and will get to #1 in 17 other countries. And that amazing song would also be covered by U-Roy, American singer Linda Ronstadt, and Jimmy Cliff. In later years, it will be covered by countless artists like American rock reggae band Sublime in 1992, and loads of reggae artists like Luciano, whose version was included on his 2001 album Great Controversy. Truly, among the greatest songs ever recorded, the Melodians would reunite in the early 1990s as part of the Roots Reggae revival to the awesome delight of their fans, and would begin touring internationally, appearing in the biggest reggae festivals on the planet. But sadly, tragedy would strike that trio when Brent Dow passed away in 2006 at the age of 59. Tony Brevet and Trevor McNaughton continued as a duo until 2013, when Brevet also sadly passed away in Miami of cancer at the age of 64. McNaughton would continue and release the group's final album in 2017, titled The Return of the Melodians, which impressively would reach #19 on the Billboard reggae charts. But tragically, the next year, McNaughton, the last of the Melodians, went to meet Jah in November 2018 at the age of 77. And that was the end of the Melodians, an amazing team of gifted artists whose core strength wasn't just their singing ability, but definitely the genuine friendship that they enjoyed even when they were apart on their own solo projects. They're one of my top 3 Rocksteady groups of all time, and undoubtedly among the foundational reggae acts that took Jamaican music to the world. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.